The island of Sodor is a very special place indeed. There are lots of different forms of transportation: road, bus, tractor, and railway, among many others, of course, but railway is the most popular. You can see lots of engines hard at work, like Thomas, who always cheers everyone up. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the island of Sodor.
Depending on Edward. Edward is one of the oldest engines on the island of Sodor. He's a very hard worker and loves to help his friends. Edward has worked on the railway the longest. He's also a mixed traffic engine, which means he can pull goods cars as well as coaches and carriages, which makes him a doubly useful engine. Edward is also a mentor to newcomers on the island, and they all love Edward all the same. One day, Edward arrived to the yards. The Fat Controller was waiting. "Edward, you must go with Thomas to Brendam Docks. Thomas will shunt you a very important goods train that is due for Knapford Station this afternoon. I expect that you will be on time as you are one of my most reliable engines ever." "Yes, sir," smiled Edward. "You can't do it," teased Gordon. "You're of no use to the railway," Henry chortled on. "Henry, I thought we were friends." "Henry hoosed steam at Edward." "Bust my buffers," puffed Edward. "Anyway, I have to go be a useful engine." Edward wheezed slowly around the bend. "What's the matter?" puffed Thomas. "My wheeze, it hurts my boiler, and Gordon and Henry said I am not a useful engine." "Well, they're wrong," said Thomas. "Come on, I'll take you to Brendam Docks. I have to shunt your very important goods train for Knapford. Maybe you'll feel better once you get ready to go." But Edward and Thomas puffed away, and Edward wheezed louder. Thomas and Edward arrived at Brendam Docks. "I have to get shunting," puffed Thomas. "I don't want you to be late." "My wheeze hurts," said Edward, "but I'll try to pull the train, Thomas." "All right, Edward," Thomas whistled, and he got shunting right away. Hurry up, whistled Thomas. What for, cried the trucks. "For Edward," steamed Thomas. "All shunted?" "Thank you, Thomas," Edward wheezed. "Go on, Edward, you can pull your train," puffed Thomas encouragingly. "I hope I can," said Edward as he wheezed onto the freight cars. Edward backed onto the trucks as slowly and as carefully as he could. "Heh," said the trucks as he biffed them hard by accident. Edward struggled and strained and strained and struggled, but try as he might, his wheels kept slipping and he could not start the heavy train. "I'm sorry, Thomas," said Edward. "I can't pull the train." "Don't worry, Edward. I'll take your train for you, and I'll meet you at Tidmouth Sheds later." Edward puffed happily away, and Thomas went to buffer up to the trucks. "Why didn't the Fat Controller expect the two of us to pull one freight car on our own?" said Henry. "Because he doesn't trust one of us to do it," said Gordon. "But he trusts Edward to pull a whole train by himself. It's unfair, I say." Edward queezed and whizzed down the line. He saw Emily at a signal. "Edward, I need some help. I have to get these passengers to Great Waterton, but I'm feeling worried I can't pull the train on my own." "Don't worry," said Edward. "Although I'm sick, I'll help you." "Thank you, Edward," said Emily. Thomas was tired. He had been working all day, but he didn't want to let his friend Edward down. He had to get the train to Knapford on time, and he knew he could. Thomas arrived at Knapford Station. The Fat Controller was talking to Gordon. "Thomas," said the Fat Controller, "this train is late. Where is Edward? Why are you pulling the train?" Thomas didn't want to get Edward into trouble. He had to make up a lie. Edward took on the wrong sort of coal at the quarry, sir," stuttered Thomas. "The quarry? The Fat Controller gave Thomas another job, and Thomas puffed away. The Fat Controller sent Gordon to go talk to Edward. Annalea was hissing steam at the junction. What's wrong, Annalea? Puffed Edward as he wheezed in. This freight car's too full of flour. I won't be able to move to the flour mill. Don't worry. Although I'm sick, I'll help you, said Edward. Oh, you don't have to, said Annalea. I'll do it, said Edward. I'll do it. Edward was wheezing loudly, but Annalea was happy as she would get to the flour mill in time and please the Fat Controller, which made Edward happy. Thomas puffed sadly across the island of Sodor. He felt upset that he had lied to the Fat Controller, but he knew he was helping Edward. Gordon puffed across the island to find Edward. He found Edward resting in a siding. What's this about the wrong sort of coal at the quarry? Gordon quizzed. What are you talking about? Said Edward. Gordon told Edward all about Thomas and the Fat Controller. Oh no, said Edward. I've gotten Thomas into trouble. The Fat Controller wants to speak to you and Thomas at once, said Gordon. He doesn't like what he's hearing. He wants to know why you didn't bring the train to Knapford and why Thomas was late. He gave Thomas another job to do. The Fat Controller's upset. Come on, Edward. All right, Gordon. The Fat Controller was talking to Thomas when Edward bustled up. His wheeze was louder. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't want Thomas to get into trouble, so I told him to make up a lie and take my train 'cause I felt sick. Don't worry, Edward. You are a loyal, kind, and hard-working engine. I shall have you mended. Edward was excited. Thank you, sir. He suddenly felt better already, and he decided that it was always right to tell the truth, and he puffed away. Thomas felt bad he lied to the Fat Controller, but by the time Edward returned home, he knew that he could do it, and that he is a really resourceful engine. Have you ever felt afraid of doing something? Because you were afraid to get into trouble? Once, my friend Edward was worried about his wheeze because Gordon and Henry had made fun of him prior to him finding out about it. So he lied to me because he was worried. The Fat Controller gave Henry and Gordon, the big bullies, another job, which made them look silly. They don't like pushing freight cars along, but they had to anyway to please Sir Topham Hatt. As Edward puffed away, he decided to help the other engines so they wouldn't be late with their trains. But this only made Edward feel worse. He left me to take his train to Knapford, but I was late. But Edward and I decided it's always best to tell the truth. Even when it's hard, we mustn't tell a fib. See you next time.
He's the cheeky one. James. His fame